Thank you, everybody, for braving the weather to come see me talk. I'm in awe and wonder, honestly, that this many people are here to see my silly cartoons. I'm gonna do the stereotypical definition thing, and so I looked up wonder when he asked me to talk about wonder. Started with the definition, and then started thinking about my work and realized how much of a connection there actually was. So the noun for wonder was a feeling of surprise mingled with admiration caused by something beautiful, unexpected, unfamiliar, or inexplicable. And the verb was the desire to be curious, to know something. So that made it really hard to figure out what I was going to talk about because I do a lot of both, and so I do a lot of the verb and wondering what the effects of my work are going to be, hopefully to, create the noun and create something that would end up trapping somebody there for a moment. So this is a quote by Margaret Stone. It says, "A state of wonder is a state of mind." If some of you guys don't know, I'm the artist in residency at Children's Mercy Hospital, and so my job is to take people's minds off of what they're dealing with on their different kinds of medical journeys. So when I approach some of the work that I'm doing, I kind of imagine somebody like a kid as a vessel or a glass of water, and we're somebody themselves or somebody else is pouring anxiety into them and trying to fill this glass up before whatever medical procedure they may be going to do. It's my job to interrupt that thought and create a sense of wonder so that maybe the glass or the pitcher misses the glass for a minute, and we kind of lower that so that they can work with the staff and be able to hear and receive either the medical care or create a sense of wonder so that the kid is occupied for a moment, the parent is not being concerned about what the kid is doing, and really getting to the heart of what Children's Mercy is about. So some friends of mine in the marketing department made a quick video. I'm going to show you the video that does a much better job of me explaining this, that talks about the work at Children's Mercy. I think that you should always ask the question, what would this be like from the perspective of a kid? And obviously we're grown up and that's hard to do.
When I walk into Children's, you can definitely tell that this is what they do. This is a children's hospital and they're meant to make you feel like this is where you're supposed to be. This is where they're going to help you.
I think for a lot of our families, especially our kids, it looks like a children's museum. It doesn't look like a hospital at all.
I like that it's fun for kids.
They care about how the children feel entering the building, and they've got just a true desire, it feels like, to see what healthcare should look like through the eyes of a child, where the child shouldn't be afraid to come into a place.
There's so much art, and I think it also has this sort of psychological effect. You know, you're scared about going to the doctors, this is not your favorite place to be, but there are these things that you enjoy in the midst of it.
From the moment you walk into the hospital, you are immediately taken by all of the imagery. There's murals on our walls, there's hanging sculptures that are breathtaking, and you can't help but notice them.
The art that we have, the color that we have all throughout our hospital is very welcoming to children. It is key to helping them feel comfortable.
As an artist and someone that doesn't have the expertise in a lot of different fields, I'm lucky enough to be able to reach out to child life.
As a child life specialist, I'm always looking for ways to advocate for the kids.
And then I can work with people in the maintenance department, and that's brought a lot of 3D things out into the hospital.
I have a deep passion for the health and well-being of kids. I want them to find comfort. I want them to be able to come here, and from the moment they park in our parking space, walk in our front door, experience our decor, I want them to gain a psychological sense of peace and safety.
When Scribe came to Children's Mercy, there was a lot of excitement because a lot of people were familiar with his street art, and his vision for how this place could look is amazing. And because of that, over the years, this place has literally been transformed. And not only with his own artwork, but advocating for other artists to be represented here at the hospital. We are able to provide so many opportunities for the kids to create works of art while they're here. And I especially love that we're able to display their art throughout the hospital. We have one hallway that has 54 frames that we rotate artwork regularly from.
It still gives kids the opportunity to be kids. Like being sick, you have to grow up so fast, but being here lets you still be a kid and still not worry about being sick, but just getting some of your childhood back.
The artwork made by other kids lets you know that there are other kids that are going on the same journey with you. All the colors are sort of like grandma's blanket that they wrap around you. The artwork and the cartoon characters are things that are supposed to spark imagination and create laughter. And I think that what Children's Mercy is communicating is that we're here to deliver the best medical care and the best emotional care that we have to offer. I almost cry every time I watch. So like I said earlier, in the noun, trying to create something beautiful and unexpected, that's what I try to do every time I walk in there. This was most recently installed. I think earlier in the video, they showed like the big atrium area with the piñatas and stuff that were hanging from it. This is from a different angle. This is in the same-day surgery area. And so about a week ago, they were talking about how the kids get kind of bored inside and they're waiting and they're getting anxious. So we decided to work on the walls around the windows that look out to this space. Some of the kids aren't quite tall enough to look out, and inside it seemed kind of dreary. So we decided to try and match the look of it so that it gave the kids the feeling that they were like kind of walking up and standing up in the clouds and creating that sense of wonder that they were up high and in control. This is some work we recently did in the cardiology clinic. Before I go any farther, is there very many people here with kids that have been to Children's Mercy? Wow, that's awesome. If you got to go somewhere, that's the right place to go. This was in the cardiology clinic. I was trying to wrap around all the chairs. Eventually, chairs in the waiting room are wrapped all the way around, and the kids can play on some video games and stuff if they're not into my weird cartoons. I started thinking about like what was tranquil, what was peace. And so we decided to do this koi fish pond and tried to focus on colors. There are some things that are hidden in there. So there's a guide somewhere that tells the kids where to look for something. So they're wondering on like what else is hiding in there. You can kind of see like a rocket on one of the lily pads and some other textural things that are inside of the mural later, some stick bugs I think that are actually out of the picture over here. But every moment that we're creating of them focusing on that work is something that we're taking away, hopefully, from the anxiety of thinking about the shot or whatever they may be going to next. A lot of people wonder how this all gets done. I've got a studio space that's over at the Children's Mercy Broadway building on 30th and Broadway. They blessed me with a large enough area to work on my computer stuff. I used to do a lot of hand painting in there, but that turned into kind of a maintenance issue. Kids like to love on stuff. I've got 2 kids, and they love on my house all the time, and so I'm constantly fixing that. And so we started going over to the digital and putting this like really thick floor laminate on it that was almost bulletproof. But some of them have found their way through. But what it also did was start giving me the freedom to, if there ended up being an accident, or if there was something where there was like water damage or they had to do construction, I could just go back to that panel and find it and reprint it for them and go do an installation. The other thing that the digital work gave me the freedom to do was, since we have multiple locations out in Kansas, we've expanded out into Wichita and Joplin and other areas, that if we felt like that theme that I was working on was something that would work out in Kansas, even though the room may be different and configured differently with the windows or the tons of medical equipment we like to machine gun all over the walls. This gave me the chance to work with them sort of like paper dolls in Photoshop and be able to move the characters around and make it versatile for other locations. This is a good example of like one of our medical carts. This is in the burn clinic. There's a lot of stuff in there that gives kids anxiety because they have to clean their skin and stuff. But for a moment, we can kind of like steal that away by doing creative wraps on some of the equipment that they usually associate. It says, find the wonder you had as a kid so you can be even more effective caring for, and then I wrote a kid, so I'm obviously not an English major. But this is in our new kidney dialysis area, and this is one of the nurse stations, and when we decided to go work in there, one of the things I tried to think about was also the adults that are working in there and making it fun for them and making them recapture the wonder of what it was like to be a kid. So we kind of approached it like that we were building them like either a fort or a tree house, something that was textural and easy to install. And we have some really talented electricians and carpenters that I just kind of do a thumbnail sketch. I let them do what they're good at as far as like building it out, doing new solid surface tops, and then I come in and field measure it and then, you know, try to do something cool on top of something that they already did that was awesome. This is some other stuff in the kidney dialysis area, and this kind of describes some of the approach that I take. They wanted me to do an around the world theme, and so I've highlighted a bunch of different countries around the area. And so I just start by asking a lot of questions, and that's why I really love this theme, because wonder and asking those questions is how I start processing what it is that I need to put in there. If you notice, I mostly do animals. The conversation can get really sticky when you start drawing people and you start drawing all of the awesome shades and wonders of people, but then that also opens a whole nother can of worms about what's appropriate, who might be missing, and it's so difficult to try to hit all of those notes that in order to keep the kids focused on like the imagination and stuff, I end up focusing on animals, and in this particular case, animals from that region, so that the kids aren't worried about if they're missing or if they feel like they're part of a picture. They're looking at something imaginative and just kind of forgetting about who they are. They're just a kid or a human for a minute. And so some of the questions I asked is like, I wonder what it would look like to connect African drum beats to hip hop on a wall in a hospital, because I'm a huge hip hop fan. So this is an awesome way for me to sneak it in and put like kids breakdancing and stuff like that. I wonder what it would be like to see traditional and modern looks representing generations in harmony. So when I was asked to do this one, then the question came up about doing people in traditional wear, and one side would say, hey, that really looks like a stereotype. And then other people would say, well, I can't tell that those people are from that country unless I can see some of that stuff. So I tried to approach it like that there were different generations and stuff that are around the world. So we have like an older guy that's playing the drums, and he's got some of the traditional wear there, the little meerkat that's wearing the skirts, and then maybe some of the younger kids that have either like the Western or European influence stuff in there. And it says, I wonder if a cheetah in the hijab knows that she's pretty and that we see her too. And so we're trying to include different cultures and faiths without like kind of beating over the head, but also recognizing that we see the different populations that come in the hospital. Here's a couple more spaces. Lately I've been trying to focus on doing things at a large scale. I really love the idea that the kid is walking down the hall and feeling like that they're actually one of the characters and one of the people that's participating in the mural. making sure that we represent some of the kids that may have like limited mobility issues, and also hitting different notes from, we've got India over here, Peru in the background. Earlier you saw the print on the table. That was Australia, Africa over here, if I'm blocking it, or Mexico over here. This is Children's Mercy Broadway. This one was kind of fun. All the terrazzo floors that are there, if you saw the whales in the video, I used to hand draw all of those onto the concrete with a Sharpie, and then Desco would come in and put this metal stripping down and put it in kind of like a colored concrete, and then they use a diamond bit, giant sander, to sand all of this stuff down. That one I did the whales flying beneath them. I was really influenced by the second Fantasia movie where the whales jump out of the water and take off. Like, that created a sense of wonder for me. And I really liked the idea that the kids hopefully were feeling like they were in space. I had security send me an awesome video of a kid doing a slip and slide across it and landed right on top of a whale and was just swimming with it. And so that was proof that they were in the moment, in the beauty, in the wonder, and totally forgetting for a minute, I think, that they were at a hospital. And so that's proof that it works. Some of our CT scan rooms, big giant donut, not as cool as Donutology, but these types of equipment and all this stuff on the walls are really intimidating to kids, and they're wondering like how kids are looking inside of them. So their sense of wonder when they're looking at all of these different things can start steering into the wrong direction and overtake their medical experience. And so we try to do stuff so that when they're laying on the table and the child life specialist is working with them, they can say like, can you help me find A or B, or a Disney character instead. Things I ask myself, I wonder if I can fit a giraffe inside of a smart car and have it drive in front of what used to be YJ's. So if you look at the photograph in the background, I like to walk around the city sometimes and photograph things, but I had to change some of the signs. This is part of a much longer mural, so things like birdies had to come out because it's a kid's hospital. But I was able to keep all of the stuff. I wonder what it would be like to ride out in a giant pimped out plane. This is a Learjet that is not used for any of our staff members or our CEO. This is only used to transport kids to other specialists. So they may take a kid, for free to Boston to help them find somebody that can work with them and then get them back. It's also what our helicopters do. I'm actually leaving in a week to paint another giant helicopter and put that Super Bunny on there too. So our ambulances, you may have seen a bunch of them kind of like rolling around town. I've tried to do the entire rainbow, and now I've crossed into like silver and gold, I think, too. I try to do each one of them with similar branding that has the same cartoon characters, but each one has its own flavor. This stuff was fun because I was instantly transported to like a kid holding, a little die-cast car, and what that would be like to blow that up super big, kind of like an Ant-Man when they shot it with the ray gun, and blew it up, and then they got to get inside of it. So most of the kids that go through transport at the hospital are a lot of times lucid, and we don't go to crash sites or anything like that. That's what the city handles, and then takes them to the closest hospital. And then if they discover that the kids need to have specialized care, we go pick them up, and we pick them up in style, and it's sort of like a mobile waiting room. I'm going to talk a little bit about my spray paint works now because I'm kind of going backwards. This is what led me to working at Children's Mercy and shaped and molded and was my real education behind how I do all of my work at hospital. Was heavily influenced by whether you want to call it street art, mural art, or graffiti or whatever. They change it about every year. So I'm just trying to keep up with it and still paint cool things. My name Scribe came from, I lived in Israel and traveled throughout the Middle East when I was a kid. My dad's a minister. And so when I was in high school and I decided that I wanted to be a typical preacher's kid and do bad stuff, I thought that I needed a name. I didn't want to get caught. And so, but then there's still this tug and pull to, like the traditions of my family and our belief systems. So that's where the word scribe came from, whether it was in the Bible, the Torah, or like when I went to Egypt and was looking at hieroglyphics and stuff. And that was one of the things that really spoke to me, was somebody that was telling stories through pictures. And that's what I was wanting to do with the large walls. And so when I started taking, I was supposed to lead into I wonder where he gets his ideas. And I got 4 dum-dums at home, and with colorful names. My kids were really into food, and but this is where I draw my inspiration from. These are my kids when they were little, and I got to do this because they're not here, so they would be frustrated by that. And they're standing in front of a mural that I did with my friend Jason Brunson, dear friend of mine, and we each did one of those giant hamsters. This is down there behind Escapist, about where Broadway and Southwest Boulevard hit. There's another one down there that says Love Kansas City all the way around the parking lot that I did over there too. And that's my family. So we're back to questions that I asked myself. So I'm at Children's Mercy, and I'm wondering how a kid, how I can take a kid's mind off of something. And then when I get to go out into other spaces and add sharp teeth onto stuff and make people in thongs, I ask myself a lot of the same questions. I wonder what it would be like if you rolled up on this mural. And so if you see that was part of this large background. I couldn't find a finished photo of this one for some reason. But the story behind it was that there was this little town on an island that I've made up that have a lot of my characters on it and that are connected to a lot of my murals around town. And they used to do this thing kind of like the running of the bulls, except it was the running of the hamsters. And the whole town just thought that they were so awesome that they would throw all these hamsters out and run from them, and they would act like they were really tough. And one of the hamsters finally said, "I've had enough," and he genetically modified his 2 grandkids into something that kept growing. And so for years, around the city, as I was painting murals, you might see a hamster ball rolling by in the background, and they were growing until they popped out of the ball and became these giant, sort of misunderstood monsters. And so then now, they're not really sure what to do with it, and I'm asking questions of myself, I wonder what it would be like if we shot a bunch of bananas at it. I wonder if this guy is either puffing his chest out or tightening his butt cheeks. I'm not really sure. Is it hard to paint with boxing gloves on, and is he trying to buff him out? As part of the reason why I put my hand up there is to show the size and the scale of spray painting. I do all of my spray paint work freehand. I don't tape anything off. I don't mask or anything like that. So that's one of the challenges that I try to challenge myself with when I'm there. So being able to paint really small with spray cans is something that I take a lot of pride in. And I'm always wondering if I can, pull it off and still show enough detail. But I love the fact that people end up rolling up onto these murals and stopping for a minute and wondering, what in the heck is happening here? I picture it like a movie. I transport myself there. I see the motion of what's going on. I've seen animators in the past that acted out, and I'm sitting there acting out as the hamsters while I'm out there painting with my friend. And then I like to hit a snapshot of that, right in the middle, so that when the viewer is walking up to the mural, that they're caught in wonder for a minute of what came before this, What came after? Did the bananas work? You know, did the guy in the little underwear get stepped on? What happens next? But they also make up their own meetings, and I get tons of really cool emails through Facebook or Instagram of parents and adults who like weird stuff that pop up on these murals and either ask me questions or give their own ideas of like what they think should happen next. And that's really fun because it transports them for a minute. To be more childlike, you don't have to give up being an adult. The fully integrated person is capable of being both an adult and a child simultaneously. My wife says I do this really well. Recapture the childlike feelings of wide-eyed excitement, spontaneous appreciation, cutting loose, and being full of awe and wonder at this magnificent universe. This is how I see everything. Back in 1993, when I first moved to Kansas City, there was a small handful of murals. And when the Art Institute asked me to leave school, I wondered what the landscape would look like, one, with a lot of color and change on it, two, and I also wondered if I could irritate them by putting as many up there as possible. And so that's what led to the beginning of my career. So a couple other things. This is out at Cocobolos at Prairie Fire, if anybody has ever been out that direction. It's a kid's room. Think and wonder and think, Dr. Seuss. I like using textures and stuff in the background to mimic things like water. Still tying in some of the graffiti, still tying in some of like how graffiti would get buffed out and there'd be these like leftover marks and stuff behind. So that was how I approached the water, and still trying to create that depth so that a kid wonders, like what else is back there. There's some other work that I did for Prairie Fire out there. It says, mystery creates wonder, and wonder is the basis of man's desire to understand. This is Neil Armstrong saying that. And I keep coming back to the idea that I love the idea of doing like a snapshot in time so that people wonder what came before and after. But still tying in, when I'm working with a client, they have the Prairie Fire Museum out there, and they've got that giant T-Rex out there where the guy discovered, I think it was the guy that they based Indiana Jones off of actually, is the guy that found the full skeleton of a T-Rex, and they're setting the prairie on fire. And those people out there are really great about letting me tie in small things without it becoming like an advertisement. It was just something that was part of the story. So how do I integrate those things and keep it weird, and but also have it be relevant to other things that are in the surroundings? Some other work where I tied in some client work. I wonder if a hot dog can surf on a banana. And this is actually for Blue Moon. This was at the Blue Moon flagship brewery in Denver. And so the main two things that they asked me to focus on was they were like, you can do your thing. It's in the Rhino district, so I paint this rhino named Rumpus a lot, who's actually a kind of a caricature of me, or the creative soul that's in a lot of us. But I tied in some small things like the floating oranges and stuff, so when you see it as a picture on its own, it just is kind of this strange imaginative picture, but when you're on site and you understand what Blue Moon is about, the colors and the oranges make sense. I'm also a really huge fan of graffiti lettering, and when we incorporate this into some of my murals with my friends, I like to imagine what those things would look like if they were large and people stopped worrying about what they said. If they were just abstract sculptures, I'd love to see giant lettering in between median, fully 3D and painted as a sculpture, or I like to see them transparent so that there's something that you see through. So when I paint with my friends and they add that stuff in there, we usually try to add it into the space like it's a physical thing that you could walk around. Here's some work. This was on Instagram post recently, done by the Creative Mornings people. I wonder if I could capture the feeling of going to your first game. And when the Royals put the stuff out to do their Raised Royal campaign, kind of noticed that a lot of the murals, a lot of fantastic murals that were going up, but I heard something totally different and asked a totally different question and read the word raised as something totally different other than raising the roof or raising like people's excitement or something like that. I saw it as like, because of where I work, I instantly went into the mind of a child. And so I tried to paint this giant character so that when adults walked up to it or kids walked up to it, the adults all of a sudden kind of became the kid because they were something that were small in comparison to scale to that, and to recapture that feeling of what it would be like for a kid to go to their first game and be excited by that. Wonder what it's like to walk around the corner in the middle of nowhere in like Junkland in Kansas and the West Bottoms and find something that should be way faster than a turtle riding a turtle. This one, I wonder if I just figured out who's in charge in this house. I did this one out in Salina, Kansas, and for the Smoky Hill River Festival. And I was going out there and I was trying to find something that was relatable, and they said that they wanted to donate this to the animal shelter out there, so they wanted my animals in there. But I wanted to do something that sort of made sense to rural America too. So I picked the American Gothic painting. Some people think it's a wife. Some people think that the American Gothic painting is his daughter. Whatever it is, there's a lot of arguments about like their facial expressions, if they're sad about where they live, or what it is. But I decided to change the meeting. I thought about my house, and I know that my wife is totally in charge, and thank God for that. But tried to make it fun and make people stop at the event and wonder, like, why am I remembering something? It doesn't look like the exact painting, and was like pretty blown away by how many people, as soon as they saw the pitchfork, knew exactly what I was talking about, but we're not people that were usually that concerned about art. So that's a testament to that painting and how far it's gone. This is on Evolution Audio on about 39th in Pennsylvania. That giant fish is a channel catfish. I don't know if many of you know, that's our beautiful state fish. I've always had a fascination with turning fish into submarines for some reason. And I also wanted to do something that paid homage to some people that supported me for years. We had an old mural that was on here probably since about 1995, and this is what was painted over it. And they're a recording studio. And so we kind of did it to where it looked like it was the controls, or I did it so it looks like it was the controls for the submarine, but also that some of the stuff that was controlling it was equipment for recording, which the guys inside loved because it said something a little bit about what went on inside the building without it becoming like a direct advertisement, which is something I usually take a lot of pride in trying to stay away from. If people are going to stop and wonder for a minute and try to figure out what's going on, I don't always want the message at the end to be like, buy this thing. This is something I did in VML a while ago, kind of imagining like what the process would be like for those people that like go from the creative sketch into like birthing it into something that was real. That one was a lot of fun. We showed up and that was like almost 100% freestyle, no sketching or anything. Most of these murals that I do, all I do is draw weird little jelly beans of where stuff's gonna go. And I do all of them freehand up on the wall, the scaling and stuff, and kind of like let the painting take over. It's another example, just did this recently for a mural event called Casey Masterpiece that focuses on a lot of graffiti lettering. So my friend Mick came in from Denver, who's one of my favorite people to paint with. Great example of trying to put that stuff into space and making graffiti lettering a real thing that people would walk around. This is total randomness. I did this in Indianapolis with a couple of my friends, and just literally drew like a giant shape and like let it take over, and brought a bunch of crazy colors, and was like, wonder what kind of pizza this guy likes, and like, does that little suit get soggy when he's swimming around, and why in the world does his knife say mom on it? So a couple other things that I've thrown out there that I've always found like to be kind of funny. Like, I did this in Santa Cruz years ago. Random guy popped up on me at a gallery show and was like, I'll give you this money right now to paint on here. And so I was like, well, I want to do anything I want. And he was like, that's fine. And so a rabbit with a handlebar like mustache came out. And then I wrote tasted on there. And which has created so many funny questions for that guy. So that's what he gets for me saying I get to do whatever I want, because they're like, with the movement of all these people doing these like little tiny micro businesses and stuff, they're like, what are you selling in there? And then they're like, no, this is what we go on vacation. And they're like, ooh, what does tasted mean? So this is a fun junkyard around the Cincinnati area that me and my buddy, got into, and I instantly saw this shape and thought like it'd just be so fun if somebody was walking in to buy parts out of a car or something like this and stumbled onto this, and somebody that didn't expect it, and that's part of the heart of like what this talk is about, is like finding beauty or something that maybe confuses you and stops and makes you like wonder what's going on. I love that stuff. I still paint in the alleyways around Kansas City when I can, because I like to go out and do it for my own art therapy, and two, I still love the idea of it being like in an unexpected spot and making somebody shocked for a second at the amount of color that could be there. This last one's a silly one. It's just a bandolier of a bunch of hamsters keep popping up in this theme. They're actually all my friends who painted on the mural, which was kind of fun. I made them, but then I made, I don't know if that's me, I can't remember, but I'm shooting them at people. So this is the last quote. This is not about wonder, but it's by a really great person, Stevie Wonder. But it says we all have the ability, the difference is how we use it. And what I'd really hoping that like you kind of come away from this, even though I may have not touched on it as much as I should have, is transporting yourself into that person, whether it's that kid or the viewer, and being open and honest about, I tell my kids all this, it's okay to be a dork for a minute in front of other people and do something that's a little bit unconventional, even if it's like me acting it out. I do this a lot at home, which is embarrassing to them, but to go ahead and shed that stuff and be like a kid for a minute. And earlier on the one that had the rabbit, like you don't have to be a kid to do that and truly and authentically transport yourself to that space and be brave enough to go ahead and capture that moment in time and make people stop and wonder what the heck's going on. So thank you so much for coming out and listening to my silly talk and my cartoons and stuff, and I think we're going to open it up to a couple questions if we have time.
I'm going to give you a hug.
Okay.
That was great.
Thank you.
That was great.